Yeah, mainly we'll be talking about the various challenges when you see a case of your own surgery or a post trauma or even endogenous. When you have some patients sitting like this in your clinic, the first thing is you are totally at a loss of how to proceed with these cases, especially if it's your own post-operative case. You always your heart rate goes up, BP goes up, and so what are the challenges we face? First is to a diagnostic. I mean, what is the? Is it really a infection or a severe inflammation, or and what is the source? Then what organism is causing this? Then what be other challenges, meaning once you diagnose, then you have the challenge of how to go about salvaging this eye, both structurally as well as visually. What are the medicines available, and if indicated, surgical interventions also. So first question when you see a case like this is whether it's because of the microorganism or just inflammation because of the surgery. So this you can look at the patient's surgical history and decide how much you are manipulated inside the eye, and if there's any remnant cortex or a nucleus drop into the vitreous cavity. So all this will give you an idea of whether we are dealing with inflammation or infection. And also you may have to make a call on which segment is more involved. Sometimes you may have a totally occlusio pupil because of FM and all those things in the anterior chamber, and the pupil is occluded, but the vitreous cavity can be totally clear, so it becomes a little bit easier to manage. So, so in these cases, to assess the posterior segment, you may have to do a ultrasound B scan examination to look at the posterior segment and decide what is the how much is involved and what is the best way to go ahead. Here we're just showing cases of like again you can see a case of scrawled up capsule with a retained lens in the just inferior to the pupil, which was sitting there and producing recurrent bouts of inflammation. And ultrasound was able to show the hidden lens remnant just behind the pupil. So you may have to do a proper examination to identify the exact cause. Once you know that this is causing, then it becomes relatively easy. In this one more case, you can see some bits of cortex sitting and producing the reason for the inflammation just beneath the iris in the inferior quadrant. Now we know that you're not dealing with the infection, and it's much more easier to deal with this case, and can go ahead and removing. If the small bit, you can just cover up with steroids till the cortex bits gets absorbed. So one more thing which you have to keep in mind is the toxic anterior segment system syndrome, and also the toxic endothelial cell destruction syndrome. So here what we see is limbus to limbus corneal edema with relatively white conjunctiva. Usually the ultrasound will show that the posterior segment is totally free of any changes, but sometimes you can get a little bit of inflammatory vitritis in the, especially the inferior, anterior and inferior lower vitreous because of the gravity. So occasionally you get a minimal amount of vitreous involvement also, but usually what we see is only the anterior chamber is involved. The IOP may be normal or high, or sometimes even low in some of the cases. Mainly you have significant corneal edema, limbus to limbus, disproportional to the intraocular pressure, and also the relatively wide conjunctiva. So here we are showing some cases of trace hypopyon with this uniform edema, and the hemorrhage is because of the conjunction is because of the conjunctival involvement because of the SACS surgery. But the causes for this will be from the contaminants in the irrigating solution or the visco which you use during intraoperatively to insert the iris or wash the nucleus, bring out the nucleus. And also the various instruments, Simcoe cannula and all those instruments which are used, sometimes deposits from using a non-reverse osmosis water can also produce salt deposition onto the instruments following this autoclave cycle, which can, when introduced into the eye, can produce all these symptoms. So in this, we can see that the inflammation is seen the very next day, and the patient will not have pain like you would normally expect in a significant inflammation in a patient with infection. And treatment, as Dr. Balamurugan pointed out, is the steroids is the way to go. Usually topical steroids, and if glaucoma is there, you can cover that up with anti-glaucoma medications also. Systemic steroids may be indicated in severe cases. So in toxic endothelial cell destruction, sometimes after the eye recovers from the inflammation, it can lead to a permanent decompensation also. So you have to keep that in mind. So when you're looking at the microbiological cause of infection, when you want to look at that, first we go by clinical suspicion. We have an idea of what we are dealing with. Then you go about taking a sample from the eye and identifying the organism, and then looking at the sensitivity of various drugs which you are going to use as a treatment option. So when you have a very severe, very fast progressive disease with the total corneal involvement where there is sloughing and necrosis and a significant post-segment involvement also, then you must assume that especially if it's a cluster, we have to decide if you're dealing with a case of gram-negative pseudomonas infection. And sometimes even the pneumococcus also can have significant severity because of the toxin-related damage. So in these cases, if you're identifying, you may hike up the steroids, thereby countering this toxin-related inflammatory process. So, and again, when you are dealing with a nocardia, the picture is quite different. You can see the cotton ball, like a big opacity sitting in the anterior chamber, and the ultrasound will show that the vitreous is almost always clear. And you can see the necrosis at the site of section or at the site of paracentesis spots. Then you know that, and again, relatively white eye compared to other infection, then you know that you're dealing with a nocardia, especially when the patient is a very frail old person with a very low body weight and sunken eyes. These are usually some of the cases where nocardia is more predominantly affect these patients. It's just showing a case of one of our cases where we had, I can see the typical cotton ball opacities, and you can see that the top anterior chamber is superior anterior chamber is almost normal, just very confined. So both the conjunctival and the anterior chamber inflammation is usually quite less in the initial stages. So it will be almost simulating a fungal infection also. So usually we have seen that in these cases, removing the IOL and bag leads to a much better prognosis. Otherwise, the risk of phthisis is quite significant disease. So usually if there is significant involvement, usually go for a removal of the IOL and the bag. Sometimes when you're doing a vitrectomy in these cases, the nocardia can localize in the ports, and this is one case where there was secondary scleral abscess following a vitrectomy in one of the eyes, and applying cryo and debridement led to resolution. And as Dr. Balamuran pointed out, propionibacterium, where there's multiple low-grade inflammation with multiple recurrences, especially in late stages, especially after YAG capsulotomy, you know that you're dealing with the propionibacterium. And fungus, again, regional differences, especially between the North India, South India, all the regional differences are there. And we have this atypical fungal can produce this colony-like appearance even inside the eye. So you know that you're dealing with a fungus. So we have a sort of a rough estimation of what we are dealing with from your clinical examination. And once you have this, then you can go for sample collection, which can be, if there's a corneal involvement, you can always do a scraping with a Kimura spatula and then put it on a plate and try to identify immediately what the organism is. If the cornea is clear, then you want to take the anterior chamber aspirate. Vitreous aspirate has the best chance of localizing the organisms compared to anterior chamber and aspirate. If the vitreous is involved, the best option would be to go for a vitreous sample. So in case some people have tried centrifuging the bottle fluid also, and if there is endogenous infection involved, then we have to rule out any source of infection from the urine, blood, or sometimes from the abscess in the skin, or post-surgically if you have some pus collection in the surgical field. So as I told you, these are the amount of sample which you need to take from the eye for sending it to the both for sampling as a smear and culture. So using a cutter will reduce the risk of vitreous traction and secondary retinal tears or RD. And cassette fluid can be used sometimes when the amount of aspirated liquid is quite less. Various media have been used to, most common being the gram stain and the GMSA, and also the blood agar, chocolate agar, and the Saburats potato dextrose agar for the fungal. Anaerobic media may be needed for in suspected cases also. So some of the common organisms, as you know, is in a cluster would be Pseudomonas or Haemophilus influenza or Klebsiella. Routinely, what we see in low-grade infection is Staph epidermidis, sometimes Streptococcus, and Bacillus cereus you see often in post-traumatic infections. And depending upon the area you live in, fungi can be a little bit more common than other organisms also, especially the post-operative setting. So doing a culture and looking at the sensitivity also will help you to choose the more specific drug to kill this organism. And sometimes just taking a vitreous sample or a anterior chamber sample may not be enough to identify the offending organism. So like in this case where there are multiple recurrences in spite because they cannot localize, and finally the IOL had to be removed and inoculated on the plate, which again showed the presence of Aspergillus fumigatus infection in this patient, which was then treated with both intravitreal amphotericin and oral voriconazole medications. and followed by, so IVL removal led to resolution of infection in these patients, followed up by later on by a anterior chamber IVL implantation. Again, this was one more case of Propionibacter macnes, where again repeated biopsies were unable to show the offending organism, and again the bag removal which was sent for examination, the rest of the examination was able to identify the cause of infection in this particular patient. So sometimes it is one of a series of from Madurai of the Burkholder or Shapeshier. Sometimes even though anterior chamber may be negative, we can even send the it was producing abscess at the site of corneal incision where the section was made for inserting the foldable IOL. Sending the cut cornea for culture can also provide the cause for the causing bug. So this is one more case where the routine biopsies were proven to be there was no negative, but once they did a PCR of the aspirate, they were able to show that Mycobacterium cheilionii was this was actually a trophic ulcer following a SIDWA infection. After a PKP, he developed a chronic indolent infection, which later turned out to be PCR positive for Mycobacterium. And later on, they took a vitreous sample and they were able to prove that the acid fast bacilli was localized in the vitreous cavity also. So now we have the PCR, which can be done, routine PCR for eubacteria or panfungal can be done. And again, we have one of our companies in Bangalore, which is Exciton, which produces very fast, within 26 hours, 24 hours. If you are in the city, you can get it within 6 hours. They have immediate detection of PCR positivity. They have separate panels for both endophthalmitis as well as UVS panel, where you have the viral and the Mycobacterium panel. And this is for the routine post-operative infection where all these organisms tested. You can get an immediate result, especially if there is a severe infection where you are pressed for time and you want to treat to get a maximum outcome. So going for PCR can help you. So once you are diagnosed, then the other challenges are how to go about treating these patients. What are the antibiotics, what are the antibiotics which or antifungals which are given, and whether silicone oil has a role. So silicone oil, some people have tried as a bacteriostatic, but again, it's not been proven to be that very, because there are studies showing the growth of in vitro growth of organisms under silicone oil. So silicone oil as a bacteriostatic is questionable benefit actually. So the drugs should be ideal one where there should be broad spectrum, especially when you don't know what the offending organism is there. When you want to start the therapy, you may have to go for both coverage of vancomycin. For vancomycin for the drugs for gram positive, usually the choice is the vancomycin. And for gram negative, ceftazidime is the first choice because amikacin and gentamicin, aminoglycosides, it can cause macular infarction as a toxicity. If you're suspecting fungal infection either from the clinical appearance or based on the your region, that's the first choice. Then you have to go for amphotericin B or voriconazole injection. And steroids can be given, especially when you know that the infection is getting uncontrolled. Again, going for repeat intravitreal antibiotics. And dexamethasone can be added if you're happy with the recovery process to counter the intraocular inflammatory apart from the infection itself. This is a case of a macular infarction following an intravitreal amikacin injection. This is one of the complications. So amikacin is not the first choice, but it can be used for cluster infection where ceftazidime may be resistant, and also it's one of the choice for nocardia also. Both vancomycin and amikacin have very good effect against nocardia, but it's the second choice, not the first choice, because of this complication. So when you're dealing with the cluster infection, again, the first choice is always not ceftazidime because powerful drugs in these scenarios. So usually we prefer to go for a piperacillin tazobactam as your the first choice, because in cluster, is especially with a significant corneal one where you're suspecting gram negative infection, piperacillin is the first choice rather than going for amikacin or ceftazidime. So once you have a culture and you feel that it is resistant to all these drugs, then you can other choices are colistin, polymyxin B, and imipenem. And rarely tried drugs have been carbonicillin, ticaricillin, Astronam also. Usually, vancomycin resistance is not that very common, but if you have proven that vancomycin resistant in a gram-positive organism, if vancomycin resistance has been proved by culture, then other choices have been ciprofloxacin, moxifloxacin. You can directly use from the bottle itself directly because it's preservative-free. And then oral linezolid also has been very, very useful in these rare scenarios where vancomycin is showing resistance. Just showing some surgical videos on how to go about collecting samples. So this is a video showing the taking an antechamber aspirate using a 24 gauge needle. So try to take at least 0.4 to 0.4 to 0.5 sample. And using a 24 gauge needle, you can take from the vitreous directly. But sometimes the vitreous is a very gel form. It may not be possible to get a sample by just the syringe technique. And plain vitreous biopsy also the risk of causing traction and inadvertent unintentional retinal tears. So needle is not the choice, but if you're anti-segment surgeon where you don't have access to vitrectomy instruments, needle can be dried directly. And then initially when you don't have a diagnosis, vancomycin and ceftazidime is the first drug of choice. So when you don't have calipers and all those things, once the syringe has got a diameter of 3.5, just pressing it on the limbus will give you the site where you want to enter. Just to rotate that, you will get a circular impression, and this will be the edge of that will be the site for taking your vitreous sample and giving the intravitreal.
I think actually your time is up, but you can take few more minutes.
Few slides.
Yes.
So this is just showing the core vitrectomy in progress. So when there is a significant corneal edema, we use AC. We don't want to place the infusion in subretinal or suprachoroidal space. Sometimes you place the infusion in the anterior chamber to prevent iatrogenic injury to the posterior segment structures. So here the aim is to first clear the media, and if the media is clear enough to go ahead, we always try to induce the PVD at least in the posterior pole. So previously it was only core vitrectomy, but nowadays the choice is to do as much vitrectomy as possible because this gives you a much better and faster recovery following the infection. So provided the media is clear, you can be as thorough as possible. If the media is not clear, then this is how to deal with the thick anterior chamber membranes, especially in an nocardia infection. You have very, very thick anterior chamber membranes. Rather than trying to directly pull with McPherson, so inject visco and then pull it from the limbus towards the center by using a Sinskey hook. And this will separate from all the corners, and then this central part can be dealt with either a small gauge intraocular forceps or the McPherson forceps. Showing the surgery in progress, how the Sinskey hook is used to separate from all the edges of the angle. So otherwise, it will come in piecemeal. This way, you can remove it in toto. So nocardia infection, when you're trying to remove the IOL and bag, one thing you have to keep in mind is the presence of inflammatory membrane just beneath the iris, apart from the granulomas which are sitting in the anterior chamber. So in these cases, you have to remove, first address the anterior chamber FM and the granulomas, and then go into the sub-iris plane, and then inject more visco and address the membrane just beneath the iris. So then you have to loosen all the zonules. First remove the IOL and then loosen all the zonules and try to remove the bag in toto, because small remnants of leftover bag can produce recurrent infection in the eyes. So when you have a cluster, sometimes you end up with severe corneal involvement, and doing vitrectomy in these eyes can be a little bit difficult. You may have to go for a temporary K-Pro in these eyes to deal with the very severe presentation, like in this case, where there's a significant infection following cluster. So I think I'll end there, but I just wanted to point out that Aurolab has got a e-kit, which is available as a single pack, where suppose you have an infection in your theater, all the items needed for doing a vitreous biopsy and intravitreal injection, right from the cotton swab to the speculum to the drape to all the drugs to be mixed, all the cannulas, everything is there as a single box. And especially if you're sitting in a periphery and trying to source at short notice is difficult, you can all have this e-kit at handy, so you can deal with the infections as and when. So to conclude, early detection of all these infections is very critical, and prompt referral if you're not having backup vitreoretinal surgeon, and proper care can lead to better outcomes and to preventing of late complications. Thank you.